We are going to finish chapter 2. Wilbur and Charlotte were at the fair, and Charlotte was beginning to show her age. Jessie read the words that Wilbur said to his best friend. I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Charlotte. Perhaps if you spin a web and catch a couple of flies, you'll feel better. Well, the second part didn't apply at all, but Jessie imagined herself saying the first line. I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Evan. It sounded about right. At least it would show him that she cared, and Jessie knew that this was important to someone who was feeling upset. She decided to go downstairs and give it a try. She would do just about anything to get Evan back to the way he was before the letter. Jessie looked in the kitchen and the backyard. No Evan. She was halfway down the steps to the basement when she heard a noise coming from the garage. She opened the door and felt a full heat of the day on her skin. It was like some giant had blown in this hot, stinky breath on her. In the garage, she found Evan and Scott Spencer. Weird, she thought. Evan doesn't even like Scott Spencer. They'd been on again, off again friends since kindergarten. But ever since Scott had purposely put Evan's bike helmet under the wheel of the Treske's minivan so that Mrs. Treske ran over it when she backed out, the friendship had definitely been off. Jessie looked from Evan to Scott and back again. Now she had no idea what to say. I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Evan. Didn't seem to make much sense when Evan was obviously having some fun with his friend. She tried to think of something else to say, and all she could come up with was, what are you doing? The boys were bent over a piece of cardboard. Evan was writing letters with a skinny red felt-tipped pen. The purple cooler was in the middle of the garage, and 2 plastic chairs were stacked on top of it. On the top chair was a brown paper bag. Nothing, said Evan, not looking up. Jessie walked over to the boys and peered over Evan's shoulder. Lemonade, 50 cents. She said, you spelled lemonade wrong. It's an O, not an I. But she thought, oh good, a lemonade stand, my favorite thing to do. The boys didn't say anything. Jessie saw Evan's mouth tighten up. You want me to make the lemonade? She asked. Already made, said Evan. I could decorate the sign. She said, I'm good at drawing butterflies and flowers and things. Scott snorted. We don't want girl stuff like that on our sign. Do you want to use my lockbox to keep the money in? It's got a tray with separate compartments for all the different coins. Nope, said Evan, still working on the sign. Well, she said, I can clean the table for you. The small wooden table, still covered in black streaks, was pushed up against the bikes. We're not using it, said Evan. But we always use the table for the stand, said Jessie. Evan pushed his face in her direction. We don't want it. Jessie took a couple steps back. Her insides felt runny, like a fried egg that hasn't been cooked enough. She knew she could just go back into the house, but for some reason, her legs wouldn't move. She stood still, her bare feet rooted to the cool cement. Scott whispered something to Evan, and the 2 boys laughed, low and mean. Jessie swayed toward the door, but her feet stayed planted. She couldn't stand it that Evan wanted to be with Scott, who was a real jerk. More than her. Hey, she said, I bet you need change. I've got a ton. You could have all my change. You know, as long as you pay it back at the end of the day. Don't need it, said Evan. Yeah, you do, insisted Jessie. You always need change, especially in the beginning. You'll lose sales if you can't make change. Evan capped a pen with a loud snap and stuck it in his pocket. Scott's bankrolling us. His mom keeps a change jar, so we've got plenty. The boys stood up. Evan held the sign for Scott to read, turned his back on Jessie. Awesome, said Scott. Jessie knew that the sign was not awesome. The letters were too small and thin to read from a distance. Evan should have used a fat marker instead of the skinny felt-tipped pen. Everybody knew that. There weren't any pretty decorations to attract customers, and the word lemonade was spelled wrong. Why would Evan take a little help from her? She just wanted to help. Scott turned to her and said, Are you really going to be in the 4th grade this year? Jessie's back stiffened. Yep, she said. Wow, that is so freaky. Is not, she said, sticking her chin out. Is too, said Scott. I mean, you're a second grader and now you're going to be a fourth grader? That's just messed up. Jesse looked at Evan, but he was busy taping the sign to the cooler. Lots of people skip grades, said Jesse. It's not that big of a deal. It's completely weird, said Scott. I mean, you miss everything from a whole year. You missed the whole unit on Antarctica, and that was the best. And the field trip to the aquarium, and the thing where we sent letters all over the country. Remember that, Evan? You got that letter from Alaska. That was so cool. Evan nodded, but he didn't look up. It's not that big a deal, said Jessie again, her voice stretched tight like a rubber band. It's like you missed a year of your life, Scott said. It's like you're going to die a whole year earlier than the rest of us because you never had third grade. Jessie felt cold and hot at the same time. Part of her wanted to yell, "That doesn't make any sense." But the other part of her felt so freakish, like Scott had just noticed that she had 3 legs. Evan stood up and tossed the paper bag to Scott. Then he grabbed the plastic chairs with one hand. Come on, let's go. He reached down to grab one handle of the cooler. Scott grabbed the other, and together they lifted it and began to walk out of the garage. Hey, Evan, said Jessie, calling to their backs. Can I come too? No, he said without turning around. Come on, please. I'll be a big help. I can do lots of things. You're too young, he said sharply. You're just a baby. The boys walked out. You're just a baby? Jessie couldn't believe Evan had said that. After all the stuff they'd done together, and he was only 14 months older than she was, hardly even a full year. She was about to yell back something really harsh, something stinging and full of bite, like, oh yeah? When she heard Scott say to Evan, man, I can't believe you have to be in the same class as your little sister. If that happened to me, I'd move to South Africa. Yeah, tell me about it, replied Evan, crossing the street. The words died on Jessie's lips. She watched Evan walking away, getting smaller and smaller. He was deserting her. He wasn't going to stand by her at school. He wasn't going to smooth the way for her. He was going to be on the other side with all of them, looking down on her, telling everyone that she was too young to be part of the crowd, telling everyone that she didn't belong. Fine for you, Evan Tresky, she said as she marched into the house, her fists balled up at her sides. I don't need you. I don't need you to have fun. I don't need you to run a lemonade stand, and I don't need you to make friends in the 4th grade. Halfway up the stairs, she stopped and shouted, and I am not a baby.